Hi there, my name is Amanda Hicks, and this is my presentation about the evolution from human resources to human capital management. As we explore this journey, we will notice the shift from simply managing paperwork to shaping strategic growth. What is the difference between human resources and human capital management? Human resources, also known as HR, can be defined as the department of an organization that oversees recruitment, training, compensation, and compliance with labor laws. Human capital management, on the other hand, guides a more comprehensive role within management. While they still focus on recruiting, training, the administrative stuff, they also work on developing an organization's workforce to optimize performance and drive their success. So what happens when the employers stop seeing their employees as costs and start seeing them as assets? First, we have early days, and we'll call these the roots of human resources. We have the pre-industrial revolution. The focus during this time was on managing. Labor management was often simple and manual. Workers were primarily seen as costs, which of course always needed to be minimized. And beyond recruiting labor for the job, this role was primarily to just ensure that the job actually got done. So I guess we could call this more of a practical labor organization versus HR. Next up, we have the Industrial Revolution in the late 18th to 19th century. The introduction of factory work drove a larger workforce in need of management. HR functions would include recruitment, compensation, and welfare. We also saw a greater focus on worker safety and working conditions during this time. In an article published by Nexus HR, the author was Karen Larson. She stated that only during the Industrial Revolution, when the machines and technology of the time required human labor to operate, did the concept of employee management, appreciation, and engagement begin to enter conversations. To the early 20th century, we're going to call this the birth of human resources as a function. During this time, personnel departments were created to start handling hiring, firing, and payroll. The role was administrative and compliance-based, and author Patrick D. Domenico wrote an article titled How We Got Here, the 75-Year Evolution of the Society for Human Resource Management and Human Resources, stating that according to the Society for Human Resource Management, the first seeds of HR were sown in the early 20th century as employment clerks emerged to select daily help, primarily in factories. From here, we're going to notice the rise of human resources. Moving on to post-World War II growth, there was an emphasis on employee relations, labor unions, and welfare policies. Human resources also began to follow a more structured role that would focus on managing the organizational culture and training on top of their usual administrative tasks. And then from the 1970s to the 1990s, we'll call it the HR emergence. And this is when human resources formalizes as a strategic business function in organizations. The role expands to add employee development, retention, and engagement to their already traditional administrative tasks. Key developments during this time included more employee benefit programs, performance reviews, and just creating an overall positive organizational culture. The Society of Human Resource Management published an article by Christina Foles titled How to Change Your Organizational Culture. And she wrote that the notion of culture, loosely defined as the beliefs and behaviors that govern how people act in an organization, emerged in the 1980s and is now believed to be a major determinant of a company's success or failure. Transition, moving towards human capital management. Defining human capital management. Human capital management represents the strategic shift we've seen when the employers started recognizing their employees as assets rather than costs. Employees' contributions to the overall value and success of the businesses were recognized. And organizations also started optimizing people's talents, skills, and their potential with the use of effective training and development. So, what are some key differences between human resources and human capital management? We can notice that HR's focus was more administrative, compliance, employee relations based, whereas human capital management still encompasses all of that, but also adds a strategic alignment with the business goals. They focus on talent management, leadership development, and workforce planning. And from this week's lesson in Rio Learn, I added that despite the difference, the boundaries between human resources and human capital management have become increasingly blurred, especially with the evolution of technology and the growing importance of strategic talent management. Moving right along to the 1990s into the 2000s, we saw many advances in technology. It introduced HR software and systems, such as cloud-based systems, all of which improved efficiency, allowed for businesses to start making data-driven decisions. And we also noticed that the role of data analytics would shape talent strategies and help measure performance. So now let's take a look at human capital management in practice today. Looking at current trends in human capital management, we can see a shift to a more comprehensive strategic approach. Manager roles shifted to roles of leadership, adding ongoing feedback in performance management. And we also saw an integration of technology for predictive analytics and talent management. And of course, published by the Society for Human Resource Management, Lynn Grensing quoted Ed Berry, who is the National Director of the HR Benefits Technology Practice at Gallagher, which is an insurance, risk management, and consulting firm with headquarters in Rolling Meadows, Illinois. He stated that he believes one of the best uses of predictive analytics is to help employers connect the dots between employee behavior and retention or attrition. Taking a look at the impact that human capital management has had on organizational success, it has been a driver to business outcomes, including productivity, innovation, and employee retention. Human capital management is also used today in ways that give organizations a competitive advantage. It's used to utilize people analytics to make data-driven decisions. We know they use it to draw focus on employee development through other training certifications that the businesses may offer, things of that nature. They use it to create a positive work environment. Also adding that when they offer competitive pay and benefits encompassed in human capital management practices, that is an advantage that they will have. And both Microsoft and Google both leverage human capital management in order to create environments where they're going to attract the best talent, they're going to maximize on that talent, all in efforts of contributing to the overall success of the business. And with all good strategies, eventually comes their challenges, right? In human capital management, we see these challenges when there's a change in nature of work, such as remote work. That happened in abundance during COVID. Many employees that are still working from home today. It required human capital management to find new ways to track productivity and maintain engagement with their employees and the public. There was a greater reliance on digital tools to help with communicating and tracking their employees' performances. There's also been a growing emphasis on creating more diverse workplaces. This required employers to address unconscious bias, which ensured equal opportunities for all of their employees. Human capital management was simply forced to become more flexible, more humanistic, and driven by technology. Web-based conferencing platforms such as Microsoft Teams and Zoom were used for meetings. They were used for interviews, for hiring. Doctors also took over telemedicine with this feature. So they found their ways. So we have seen how human resources went from transactional and administrative to human capital management being more strategic and people-centered, of course, still with the same administrative responsibilities. So what does the future look like for human capital management? We can expect to see increasing automation, a rise of employee experience management, and of course, continuous evolution of technology. And a takeaway, as businesses evolve, how will the next generation of human capital managers drive growth? And my 3 chosen vocabulary words for this lesson. First one is DEI. And this is a big one circulating in even today's current news, and I'll expand on that a little bit on the next slide. But first, DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the definition for that refers to business practices that are implemented to create a fair and welcoming workplace for all individuals. Contemporary use drove DEI to become pretty much a central concept in nearly all industries. Hiring practices include recruitment from underrepresented groups of people, still including a fair promotion and compensation for these individuals. Businesses also added DEI-focused training programs. An anecdotal example in the public sector, and I'm going to use the public sector because that's what's a big circulation today. But these examples highlight how certain public agencies have set DEI hiring goals to ensure that marginalized groups are represented. DEI is extremely controversial, especially in political, corporate, and social discussions. Some see it as reverse discrimination. It also exposes political and ideological divides, as well as it impacts mediocrity. This is a topic I can see both sides to. Fairness for all, of course, but oftentimes employers are filling roles with less than qualified individuals simply because they are upholding DEI. Reverse discrimination is the best way for me to explain this viewpoint. Therefore, even though DEI represents efforts to create a more inclusive work environment, some are going to argue that this is not the best way to achieve goals. Just expanding on DEI a little bit because it was just published a couple of weeks ago, an ACLU article titled Trump's Executive Orders Rolling Back DEI and Accessibility Efforts Explained by author Renika Moore highlights what individuals are calling a deliberate attempt to undo progress on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility and create new barriers to opportunity. She goes on to say that in his first few days, President Donald Trump is undertaking a deliberate effort to obfuscate and weaponize civil rights laws that address discrimination and ensure everyone has a fair chance to compete, whether it's for a job, a promotion, or an education. And again, I see both sides to this. The next vocabulary word I chose was exit interview. This is the meeting between the employer and the employee who is leaving the company. This is an opportunity to find out why they're leaving, and it's an opportunity for the employer to gather feedback about the employee's experience. Contemporary use of exit interviews obviously identifies reasons for turnovers, areas needing improvement. It also is an opportunity to maintain a positive rapport. Maybe the employee was a great asset to your business and there's a potential that they might return in the future. This leaves that door open. Or maybe they're going to recommend it to somebody when they're looking for a job. An anecdotal example is recognizable in healthcare organizations when they use exit interviews with nurses to address the reasons that they're quitting. From this, we've known healthcare organizations to introduce more flexible scheduling as well as increased staffing. Much of the concerns that come from nurses are burnout, which is directly related to inadequate staffing. While it's not as controversial as DEI, many people still argue the ineffectiveness due to their lack of action from the feedback they get. So do you know somebody still working there that can tell you, hey, yeah, they made these changes? If not, there's really no way you're going to be able to follow that through. Also, by only conducting exit interviews when an employee is leaving, what if they're leaving on a bad take? This may not fully represent the overall experience in the workplace. Let's say 90% of your employees are going to give you 5 stars. So that's exit interviews. Last but not least, compensation, because everybody loves money. This is a crucial part of an employee's experience. It influences their motivation, their job satisfaction, and retention. In contemporary practice, we know compensation can include bonuses, benefits, salaries, flexible schedules, the ability to work from home even, and further career development. Maybe they're paying for you to get some certifications that even if it didn't work out in the long run, you could take elsewhere with you. An anecdotal example of this in a retail setting would be how they offer your base wage plus performance bonuses when you meet your sales goals, and also discounts on merchandise. That's what I'm going to do when I'm retired because I love to shop, so more for my money. Anyways, compensation remains controversial, I would say, because of debates over minimum wage for starters, but also disparities of executive pay and pay inequity. Some companies are undercompensating their best employees, while we see others that are paying what some of us to believe as way too much for those positions. And we also have been witness to how many millions of dollars these executives of companies are making, when in reality, without all of their little men, they wouldn't have that money. So anyways, competitive compensation strategies can enhance the employee's experience as well as long-term organizational success. While this page does not require dictation, these are my references used for the research throughout this project, and any photographs not cited in here were just general photographs pulled from clip art within PowerPoint.